3 o'clock, I will call this meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Jorge Charnico, Lee Peoples,
Here.
Anthony Black,
Here.
Dylan Bradway, Donna Cervantes, Matt Guillory,
Here.
Tyler Holmes,
Here.
Ben Sellers, and James Barnum. You have a quorum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the April 25th, 2018 meeting. Does any member have any changes or corrections to the minutes? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. This month we have no cases withdrawn. We have no continuance requests. We have one item on the consent docket. This is UDCA 16-16. Does anyone on the commission request that this item be pulled for individual consideration? Not hearing any requests. Do we have a motion to approve the consent docket?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Would anyone in the audience like for this item to be to receive individual consideration? All right, hearing none, and we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The consent docket is approved. We now move on to cases for individual consideration. We'll begin with UDCA 18-17, and I'll ask staff to introduce that case for us.
Yes, this item is a proposal to demolish 3 commercial structures and 1 residential apartment building located generally at the northeast corner of North Classen Boulevard and Northwest 26th Street. The purpose of the demolition is to make way for a new expanded version of the Golden Phoenix restaurant that currently is occupied a portion of the building that is located immediately to the north of the site. We have reviewed the proposed demolitions in accordance with the design guidelines we have in the UDC for demolitions involving the design, form, and urban character, significance of the buildings, structural integrity of the buildings, economic feasibility of remodeling and renovating the building, and also the factors related to the demolition with an accompanying proposal for replacement, which is what we have here in front of us today. I think the staff report speaks for itself in terms of the analysis we've done in terms of deciding or determining what our recommendation is going to be on the demolition. I think in conclusion, at the bottom of page 9 of the staff report, we've kind of outlined the reasons we feel it's appropriate in this case to go ahead and demolish the buildings that are in question. The 4th bullet in there talks about the things that are out there today that would go away with the demolition of these buildings. Included in that is the removal of 3 billboards, the removal of a non-conforming freestanding sign, the removal of 4 on-street parking stalls directly accessed from North Classen Boulevard, and the elimination of a visually detrimental use. And we've provided an aerial view of the operations that are currently occurring on the back side of these commercial buildings in your packet, so you can see what that kind of looks like out there today. In addition, the building at the corner, the camera shop, has 2 existing non-accessory signs on it that would also be eliminated with the demolition of the building. So in conclusion, we are recommending to the Commission that you approve not only the demolition of the project, of the existing buildings on the site, but also the approval of all the buildings that are being proposed in the parking lots, landscaping, and so on and so forth. That concludes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions the Commission may have.
Any questions for Michael on this? All right, I believe the applicant is present. If you'd please sign in and give us your name and address.
Sam Gresham, 400 Northwest 23rd Street. I'm here to represent the owners. The proposal is for approximately 14,000-foot restaurant space to allow the grocery store to expand, as well as to relocate the current Golden Phoenix restaurant and have some event space that's associated with it, kind of as part of this structure. You can see it in the plan. It's somewhat Asian, I think maybe more Japanese than Chinese, but it's still, I think, is a little better than what the adjacent property appears to be. But the concept is a pretty intensive use of the site, but we are expanding the parking lot, which is outside of the urban design district, the parking lot associated with the grocery store. So it's anticipated that that will serve to provide parking to the nighttime, but primarily the evening use of the event space as well as the restaurant. So,
Any questions for the applicant? Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak on this matter? Commissioners have any thoughts or concerns about this?
I have a general thought. So the building that's being expanded, or the building that's there existing, it kind of has some adjacency there to that corner of Northwest 26th, right?
mm-hmm. Yes, old Pipkin camera store.
Yeah. So I guess my thought is the curb cuts there on the corner, and actually kind of the adjacency of the actual project to the corner.
Right.
And I understand, parking being visible off of Classen, but was there a general attempt to maybe infill that corner with the building?
Oh, you mean bring the building all the way to the corner?
Or even, kind of adjust the, I guess, almost even rotate it 90 degrees.
Well, the building, the restaurant itself has a connection to the walk-in coolers that are inside the grocery store, which is directly to the north. The grocery stores, the walk-ins happen to be in the lower right-hand side of that grocery store. Existing building to remain, it says. They're right there where Paul is putting the little hand. So we needed a door to get back in there. So our connection really, it made sense to sort of make our connection, continuous along the long dimension of that grocery store side, as opposed to rotating it to face Classen. Their interest in having visibility both from the corner of Classen as well as from 26th Street is an effort to kind of connect it to that parking lot in the back. I mean, obviously it's quite a walk back there, but their concern was to sort of embed that with the existing building, kind of connect the two and make them be as one, so to speak.
Okay, yeah, I was just asking. And then on that, I guess the cutoff Classen, it's almost like, a drive right on 26 where it's a, primary arterial kind of cut through neighborhood street. And then you have this curb cut there right off of Classen, which, seems practical and makes sense with this layout. I don't know, I'm just kind of asking. I don't know if anyone else has a comment on it. Like, just curb cuts right off of Classen, it just seems, seems like it's car-centric in regards to 26, you pull a car out, the drive, you pull a car in. So, just thinking out loud.
It was it's directional parking, so it's a ride-in only a ride-in. It doesn't really allow cars to go out. I see what you're saying. You're saying, well, this leaves the cars to be kind of foremost on the property. Is that your point? I mean, just to see vehicles kind of in front of the building. I mean, we have almost no option. Everybody wants to park nearest the entrance.
Yep.
The entrance is on Classen. It's all the way around front. And parking right now is a hike to get both to the Golden Phoenix as it stands currently. They park all over, of course, the empty lot that's in front of Pipkin, but they also park in the back where the current grocery store parking is located. It is, an acknowledgement of what is preferred in terms of access for a customer to the front door of a store. So it is the most parking we could put in the front without consuming more than just that first 50 feet of the site. So
For sure, okay.
Yes, Sam, that's an existing curb cut off of Class.
It is,
That's
yes.
in the same place as
Yes.
the one for the camera shop.
Okay. While the function of this works with the existing building, it makes sense. I always am under the impression that Classen has the, more buildings for front Classen is always, my thought and recommendation, but I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, but for this use, I understand. So just want to make a general comment about it, though.
Any other thoughts or questions from the commission?
Question about the parking also. If you enter only off of Classen, that curb cut on Northwest 26, does that allow ingress and egress? Or?
it's two-way, and it's actually, well, I say it's two-way. It's really one-way. It's intended to allow trucks for deliveries to that grocery store. It has almost nothing to do with this property. That curb cut is also existing. That's how the trucks come in now from 26th Street to get to the grocery store, and they go straight through.
But I'm thinking the customers who are leaving the proposed new restaurant, so they'll back out, head east, and then they can go either direction, turn left or right?
No, the directional parking allows it only to go north. The directional sign on the parking stripes are going to be directional arrows showing that circulation goes north only.
To 27th.
To
Or
27th.
can they get through the alley?
Yes, it's totally paved. Everything's paved back there. It is now, and it will be in the future. It essentially has to be for the grocery store's use.
Thank you.
Other questions or concerns from the commission? Hearing nothing, I would entertain a motion.
So, one more question. So, as is with this parking, is parking an issue? Do you think is there a lack of parking for this site currently?
Not with the combined additional parking that's in behind the grocery store. We've actually added to that parking. I don't know if this is actually the most current parking scheme. I think it is. But we're depending on parking from the grocery store. It's all one owner. So the grocery store parking supplies parking for this building. It's intended that the event space, be something, of a anticipated success. So we'll need quite a bit of parking for that.
Okay. Do you know how much parking you're adding?
No, I can't remember. I'm sorry, I don't know. There's, as I say, a portion that we're adding outside the UDC as well as the parking on the site.
This portion of the UD district does not require compliance with the parking code, so they don't have to actually meet the parking demand as per the square footage of the restaurant they're building. They can provide as much as or as little parking as they want, because there's an exemption first in the eastern part of the portion of the UD district that is east of Classen, and also in the underlying zoning for the neighborhood business district for compliance with the parking code. So they're not bound to provide the exact number of stalls that the square footage proposed here would require.
Okay. I mean, it just seems like 75% of what's proposed here, or, of actual site, is allotted to parking, and less of it's for building, which, I understand, but parking is driven part of the design on this, and also being the corner, and that's where some primary parking will go. I see it as it's just not specifically ideal, but that's just me thinking out loud. I'd be interested in entertaining a new site plan, especially because there's even some existing grass I see there. It just seems like it could continue to be revised to maybe turn some of the parking, change some of the entrances, and within the design, it could accommodate a more dense-looking class-in and more hidden parking. And honestly, corners, I think, would be even more ideal for a restaurant or even real estate in general off class-in. Just my general thought, though.
We've done this several times. I mean, this isn't the first time we've brought this project to this commission. This is a much reduced project from the 68,000-foot project we had here before. But the concept is really the connection to that grocery store. The parking itself is minimal. I mean, in terms of what we've got at the frontage on 27th Street. The grass area, they're preserving that for some use. That was an apartment building originally, and they took it out. They're proposing maybe to put it back in. It's just not in the scheme right now. But that's where in the 68,000 foot or 5,000, whatever the size of that other building was, that was what that was. It was an apartment structure on that side. So I see your point. You're looking for urban density, and I'm saying, we do accomplish some degree of that here with respect to this. Our entrance is on Classen, it's on the corner, but we do, and I believe that parking needs to be adjacent to or close to the entrance. For most people, rely on that. It's taking a hike from a long distance away is a very it's a difficulty in terms of retail or commercial use. So,
I understand. I would use Uptown 23rd as an example. It's parking where
that was a historic structure. You're right. That's how it was from the way it was built originally. I agree.
Yeah. But also, people even cross over, say, 23rd Street through a crosswalk to, enter into a building. And while it's not convenient, I think it adds to the urban appeal. So I'm just expressing my thoughts and opinions and what I think would be best. So, yeah, that's where I stand.
I'll make a motion to approve, based on staff recommendation, that it meets the regulations and guidelines of the Urban Design Overlay District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that, A, the applicant obtain approval from the Traffic Commission for the design of the proposed on-street parking stalls on Northwest 26th Street. And I would like to say I like the idea of improving the area. There's been a lot of development that really adds to this Asian district, and removing these 3 billboards and the non-conforming freestanding sign, I think, is a step in the right direction. So.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, the motion.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is UDCA 1818, 600 Northwest 7th Street. Call on staff to present this.
Yes, this is a proposed application for a single-family residential structure, 2 stories tall, at the southwest corner of North Dewey Avenue and Northwest 7th Street. The applicant has requested, the design proposed by the applicant involves a couple of variance requests that are necessary to build it as they've proposed. The first is a front yard setback. That's the setback facing Northwest 7th Street. In the Cottage District, as you're familiar, the front yard setback is established by the range of setbacks of the existing structures on the same side of the street in the same block. And we've looked at those, and the range is outlined in the staff report, and this proposed setback is approximately 9 feet closer to the street than the range would allow, and therefore that's a deviation from the development standard, and that will require a variance. We've prepared an analysis for you in the staff report on that variance request, and we are recommending denial of that variance request. The second variance request is for a short fence wall, and also in the front yard facing Northwest 7th Street. It's designed using brick, which is a material that's not allowed, and it's also designed in a solid manner, which is also a design style that's also not allowed. The code requires a decorative open fence design in the front yard, and talks about using ornamental metal to be used, or wood slats, picket fences, and that kind of thing. And neither the brick or the design of the wall are compliant with the code. However, it's not an uncommon design for people to try and put a short wall in the front yard to kind of delineate the breaking point between the public and private areas in the front yards. And we have seen this done in other areas, and we don't feel it's an objectionable proposal, and therefore we've recommended approval of that variance request. Under the design guidelines, there are two issues to consider. One is the proposed use of wood siding in various elements, accent portions of the design of the building. You can see some of that wood siding in the renderings that are in your packet. We feel it's an appropriate use, and we've approved it several times on other homes in the Cottage District, and we're recommending approval of that material for this project. And then the fourth item is or the second item under the design guidelines is the elevation of 24-inch requirement that we have. It's kind of a carryover for when we did have actual cottages in the Cottage District. And as I've outlined in the report, for these contemporary style homes, that's not really a pertinent element for this design style, and we're recommending that the Commission waive that requirement, as they have done on numerous other contemporary homes in the Cottage District. So that completes our staff report. We're prepared to respond to any questions that the Commission may have.
Any questions for staff? Is the applicant present? Please sign in and give us your name and address.
My name is Kent Ward. I live at 807 Northwest 9th Street currently, which is SOSA, I guess, SOSA Neighborhood Association. We're dues-paying members of SOSA Neighborhood Association. We're owners there. We're stakeholders of the neighborhood. Technically, we're, I think, a block north of where the Cottage District boundaries are. All intents and purposes, I feel like we're a part of the neighborhood. Me and my wife live there. What we're looking to do is as you have in front of you, looking to build approximately 3,100 square foot home on a 3,500 square foot lot that is constrained by setbacks. We want to live in the neighborhood and continue to stay in the neighborhood. That's why we're looking to buy and build not far from where we are, and continue to call it our home and be residents of SOSA. I do want to ask, you mentioned in staff report, Mr. Filbert, about a 9-foot setback. I believe the staff report you gave us a range of where that should be, 25 and change to 18.4.
Correct.
And we would be 14.5. So I see it as 3.9 feet out of the range. And so I don't know. I just wanted to clarify that and see if that's, if I am correct in that.
Yeah, I think that the 9 foot is the difference between your house and the Nelsons.
The neighbors, yeah. But for the range that we're giving, we're asking for 3.9 feet. And I do kind of want to ask about the variances. We're requesting 2. One of them, frankly, is not a huge deal to us. But I do have to wonder kind of why one is recommended as approved and not the other, kind of how that gets decided. I don't know. I don't know if you can speak to that or anybody, how that might get decided, if it's based on what, the fence is based on what else is around, or what. I'm not sure. I don't know if I'd call it arbitrary, how one gets recommended approval and one not. But I'm here to kind of tell you why we think this reasonable setback request should be granted. It's obviously the debatable part, most debatable part of this proposal. And I think precedent gets thrown around a lot. I don't know if there's I think the precedent in this area is, there's not much of a precedent. I think each case has been and should be decided on its own merits, the individual circumstances of each lot, each home, each proposal, or whatever it may be. And I think that's what we should do here as well. Looking at reasons and the staff report for the setback, sounds like for some uniformity to the street. Also, I guess, for people along the street to from their front window or the front of their house to look down each side of the street and not be, have views obstructed of the street. But I think when you look at this particular block, there's not much uniformity there. There's a wide range of sizes, scales, shapes, massing, fence heights, architectural feature walls. There's a lot of diversity there that I think this 3.9 feet makes, is a very reasonable request. First, to the west, directly west of where we're proposing, the neighbor that would be immediately affected and have obviously the biggest gripe to our plan, I think wrote a very well-reasoned support letter. They carefully considered it. They obviously, like I said, would be most affected by our plan, and they see no harm to it. Next to them, the next house to the west, again, I guess they didn't seem to be bothered too much to be in opposition as well. But if you look at the homes on that side of the block, again, you have a wide, and across the block, you have a wide diversity of sizes. You're going to have on this side that we're proposing to build a 3-story block home next to a 1-story glass box, and then soon to be recently approved massive 3-story white stucco home. I mean, there's might be 20 to 25 feet differences in heights there between those homes, and certainly not very uniform and not much continuity there, which kind of adds to the uniqueness of this block. I also think you'll find on this side, being on the south side of the street, most of the homes that are existing are oriented to take in the beautiful downtown views of the back of their house. That's kind of where the focal points are in a lot of the homes, big balconies and decks or patios looking off to the, I guess, to be the southeast. And frankly, some, I feel like, even ignore interaction or don't have much interaction with the street, with recessed front doors, block walls, a couple of homes in the middle of the block. If you stand at their front door, you're not even going to see down the street to the east due to where the front door or the block walls that they have. And then if also, to the east of us, there's a school there. The school's actually closer to us than at least one, maybe two of the existing homes on the block to the west of us. It's 3 feet closer than what we're building. I feel like there should have been some consideration on that setback to where we are, rather than just, the 4 existing homes on our block. It's closer to the street, but again, it's being a school. It's not going to be affected, I don't believe, from our 3.9 feet of, variance request. Across the street, you also have some varying styles. You're going to have a one-story home, once again, with I think an approved home here that hadn't been built yet. That's 3 stories. Again, a vast difference in size and scale. And I also kind of want to just point out, I know the measurements are supposed to be to, I guess, exterior walls of the home or covered patios, but you have a home that features nearly 15, 18 foot tall, I don't know exactly, roughly 18 foot tall, I guess, a feature wall that extends 10 feet out further from that home, nearly solid block wall. It actually is closer to the street than what we're requesting. Maybe it's not an exterior wall of the home, but it's all the same as far as it blocking a potential view of those neighbors. And I think there should be some consideration of that. And again, the reason for this diversity of this block is there has been variances granted for several of these existing homes. So 1-story homes, some others for design, maybe fence heights. So it's a very unique and different block, I think, in Cottage District, more so than others. There's a more range of sizes, shapes, and setbacks there than I think you find on most other blocks in the neighborhood. I want to just really emphasize this 3.9 feet is what we're looking for as leeway. I think it's very reasonable. I currently, like I mentioned, live at Northwest 9th Chartel in what they call the Lisbon Lofts. These are 19 foot forward from the existing 2 older homes that are directly next door to us. Across the street, I'm watching a neurology clinic get built that's 17 feet forward than the existing 2 homes that are next to it. And then once you get into the Cottage District, just 1 block south, there's at 812 Northwest 8th Street. It's a V-shaped roof home. Recently, I don't know if it was built from the ground up or remodeled. I measured 16 feet closer than the existing older home next to it. It's 19, 17, 16 feet. We're asking for 3.9 feet. Very reasonable request, in my opinion. Going to wrap things up. I think Box Payne did a great job on the design of our home, the look. In fact, some of the letters of opposition, I think all of them were complimentary of the design. Ultimately, I don't see how this 3.9 feet is harming the block. And it should be just taken into consideration as just this project. I don't believe this is some precedent-setting proposal. The block is mostly built out, and in the end, I just don't believe it's going to harm anyone's investment, anyone's views. That 3.9 feet, us forward or back, is not taking away from anybody's downtown views. I know that's not something you can rule on, but I know that's always a concern of people, and due to the location of our lot being on the south side of the street, that's not going to harm anybody's view, and it's not going to harm anybody's investment or home, in my opinion. And I respectfully ask that you guys strongly consider our variance request. And if there's any architectural technical questions, my architect, Steve Bothell of Box Payne, can answer those.
Questions from the commission?
I've got a couple of questions, and one in particular you might bring your architect up for, specifically with respect to your low brick wall. There are other houses in the neighborhood that have that low wall condition, but if you're walking on the sidewalk, they range from 32 and down, but you go on the other side of their wall and the interior grade is up higher. So the front yard is really more engaged with the sidewalk, even though there's a low wall. it seems to me like on your lot, one, I'm trying to determine, is there an identical height of grade on both sides of the wall? And then as you transition to the south, on the east side of the property, the grade falls dramatically. And it seems to fall several feet. And how does that wall transition around, and at what height does it, because right now in your renderings, it's a level site, it's a level top of wall. I can't tell where interior and exterior grade, and especially as it rounds the corner on the south side. I could see a condition in which you have a very low wall on the residence side, and you could have a 4 or 5 foot tall wall on the sidewalk side. I'm not quite sure how that's actually occurring in reality.
Yes, the issue with the site, and I'm glad you pointed out the elevation difference in grade of the homes across the street. The reason being is everything slopes to the south. Based on that, the elevations of the homes across the street were raised up to make sure that they are above the existing slope of the grade, to make sure that their homes don't drain or get wet and flooded. So to that regards, we are having to essentially build a a pad that will be flat all the way across to the back of the site. So yes, it would be taller in relation to the existing grade. As far as the wall goes, we were proposing that that would be in relation to the new grade that would be built up inside that site. And with that said, we could potentially lower that wall without any detrimental effect to the design.
So with respect to that, is the top of the wall going to be flat?
Currently, it's shown that way, yes.
Okay, and then is it going to be 3 foot on the far east and heading south side, and then almost zero out as it comes around and it's going along 7th Street? Or is it, because as you go south, the grade is dropping, and if your wall relative to sidewalk is around 3 feet, it could get to be
If I remember correctly,
almost-
it was about a 1 to 1.5 foot drop in grade from the point of where we're proposing the front edge of the wall
right.
to the back corner of the lot. And I may be mistaken on that.
It seems to me like there's quite a bit of grade change. If you get down to the southeast corner of the property, it seems like there's 4+ feet.
There is an existing wall there, if I remember correctly.
Okay. And then my next question was is your motor court 4
It
feet?
would be raised up. It would be raised up closer to the existing, or the new finished floor elevation, because we are proposing to put a small pool in the backyard as well as the driveway, and then thus avoiding any need for curbs into the garage.
Okay, so there's no step up in from the garage into the...
Not currently, no.
Has there been any kind of grading plan done for the property yet, either by yourself or by a civil engineer?
Not yet, no.
It appears, the renderings appear to be flat, and it seems like the grade change is such that it could dramatically change the aesthetic along the east side of the property. That's not necessarily what we're discussing in primary, but it seems like that's something that I'd like to see it in reality as to what would occur along that edge as the wall turns, because it seems like an opportunity that the wall could be very low on the front, which would be more inconsistent.
And we can, by all means, lower the wall towards the back end, towards the south of the mass wall, the stone wall, and that should all be monolithic, essentially,
Okay.
in terms of the material. So at the back end, where you see currently the rolling gate in front of, we could lower that wall.
Right, and that rolling gate, behind it, there's currently in the rendering a 3-foot wall that matches the rest.
Correct.
But if that grade was to fall off, let's say 4 feet, and I don't know, you would have to validate that with some kind of a survey.
Yeah.
That, and if that wall stayed flat, you could potentially have a 7-foot masonry wall
Correct.
at that location, which would be fairly imposing for a pedestrian walking on the sidewalk. So I agree I'd like to see that looked at
As an option,
and
absolutely.
shown in the rendering with respect to grade. Also, with respect to the setback, and I was looking at it from a different standpoint. I wasn't looking at it with respect to the average of the existing structures relative to what yours would be, and that's 3.9 feet. I was looking at it specifically with respect to your next-door neighbor, and the irony is that's the one that was in support. But that 9-foot difference that I was seeing in just looking at your site, that seemed to be enough to cause me to feel like that was a little more than would feel comfortable when you're driving from the central business district to the west. So I agree that 3.9 seems shallow, but the contrast between your property and the adjacent one is the one that would cause me more of a concern or comment with respect to your setback.
Sure. And, well, I mean, that would present some problems, I think, because I believe that home is maybe the furthest step back on the block.
Okay.
So,
And maybe there's a compromise. I realize that staff had presented a number that would be, that they would feel would be in compliance that was somewhere in the middle. And then also with respect to the finishes on the wall, you've got an opaque, low stone masonry wall, and then you've got this wood material. Is that the same wood material that's in a soffit position?
Yes.
And so the masonry is not in compliance. Is that the same for the wood? Would that not be in compliance with the current guidelines?
I believe, may I speak to that?
Yeah.
I believe the masonry not being in compliance was for the fence or the wall, not particularly for the wall or building material of the actual structure.
But do you have that wood material as an extension of your fence on the southeast corner of the property?
Yes, it stands on top of it.
Okay, that's what I was, and so that would be, that particular use in that location would be not in compliance. Is that correct? To have
Well,
a solid
the
oak.
regulations we're talking about for the low brick wall in the front of the property are for front yard fences only.
All right, that answers my
So the
question.
fences we're talking about and seeing in this view here would not be considered front yard, and they're not required to comply with those regulations.
Okay, do we have a maximum height for that rear?
8 feet.
8 feet, and what's the current height as rendered?
8 feet.
Okay, so we would need to know how that works with respect to your grading as well, so that we know if it's in compliance. Okay, those are my only questions.
Any other questions from other commissioners? I would also appreciate seeing a revised site plan to see how this house looks when the grade is brought up. The picture with the truck, it looks like the truck is on the same level there, but in reality, if that truck is supposed to be in the road, it's going to be quite a bit lower, and I would like to see that. I wanted to address a couple of the comments made by the applicant. Some examples were pointed out about setbacks in Lisbon Lofts and the setback of the school. Neither of those, it's my understanding, are in the UDC, and so the setback rules would not apply to those. There was also a comment made about the setback is really only affecting just this single project and this property, but actually what would happen, we still have several vacant lots on this side of the block, and if we allow you, well, if the Planning Commission or Board of Adjustment allows you to move the setback, then we have actually we've changed the range, and those future houses can change as well. So I personally am not in favor of recommending a variance here. This is a guideline, and we do not have the discretion with guidelines that this is a regulation, and we do not have the discretion with regulations that we do with guidelines. You should have received comments from a number of the neighbors, and one of the neighbors who used to be on the commission has pointed out that the UDC has never recommended a variance to this setback requirement ever in the Cottage District. A couple months ago, we had this project at 622 Northwest 7th, just a few houses west of this proposed house, and we actually continued that so that the applicant could revise it because there were some issues with the drawing and the setback. I don't think it would be fair to that person to grant this while we require them to come back and make changes to it.
I think I remember that one because we were obviously in plannings. I was paying attention to what was going in front. If I remember right, I think it was just discrepancy in their plans. Not necessarily they had proposed going forward. They just had some measurements wrong. Ultimately, they had it, I guess, in line. But again, in that hearing, there was some talk about having big drastic changes from a 3-story house, 1-story, that was granted a variance, to another 3-story, just big white box home. And there was some chatter about that. Ultimately, they were given approval because there was nothing wrong with them, but it was variance granted before for the single-story home that kind of created this, as I mentioned, diversity and differences in sizes on this block. Obviously, for them too, they had the benefit of a full lot to build a home, something that we just don't have. I mean, we're effectively losing nearly 1,000 square feet of usable space if we stay within that range. That's why, I certainly understand I wouldn't even be here if I was asking for only 5 feet of setback, but 14 and a half feet, that's only within 3.9 feet of that range, I think is a reasonable request. Again, considering everything that it won't be harming really anybody's views necessarily. I believe down the street certainly won't be harming downtown views. As I mentioned, all those homes on that side of the block are designed to really maximize downtown views. And in front of the street is I don't think much time is spent on their front patio. They don't have patios.
I also would like to point out that all of the other homes on the block have parking access from the alley, which, due to the fact that we are only on the northern half of this lot, we don't have that option. Therefore, we have to give up usable square footage for a motor court and drive that the other homes along the street do not need.
Let me just address your comment about the house down the street, 622 Northwest 7th. You mentioned the height and the bulk and that sort of thing, and that we discussed a lot of it and that we granted them a variance. I just want to be clear, we did not recommend a variance on that issue because the bulk and the mass, that is covered by a guideline, and we have a lot of discretion on that. So we don't need to give them a variance. But what you're asking for is covered by a regulation, and we do not have discretion on that. So it's really not much that, in my opinion, we can do here other than recommend or not recommend that you get a variance. And the standard for a variance, which would be applied if you went to the Board of Adjustment, is you have to meet certain legal requirements, and it's probably not appropriate for us to discuss those here. But I don't think it's fair to all the other people on this block and elsewhere in the district who have complied with this setback regulation to start making exceptions here. And that's my opinion. I'd like to hear what others on the commission think. We also, of course, have some people here that may want to speak.
Could you tell us a little bit about the history of how this lot ended up being split into two?
Yeah, sure. Well, it goes back. I actually lived on the same street of the Nelsons, Northwest 27th Street and Penn area, and we're casual acquaintances there. We both were moving into the neighborhood around the same time. A year or so went by. I reached out to them, knowing that they had owned a lot next to their current home, and wanted to see their thoughts if they would want to sell some of that lot, or the lot. They aren't interested in selling the full lot. They want to keep it for themselves for in the future if they want to downsize, essentially, or move somewhere else and spend half their time somewhere else, and keep that and maybe build a smaller home for themselves in the future.
And they're in the 604 Northwest 7th?
Yes.
Okay. So the neighbor directly to the west is
The owner
who split the lot? Okay. When was that done?
Yeah, it was put under contract several months ago.
Okay. Thank you.
Could we hear from the neighbors?
Yes. Any members of the public that would like to address this, please come up to the microphones, sign in, give us your name and address.
Hi, my name's Ed Lynn. I live at 601 Northwest 7th, directly across the street, south of the property. My wife and I, we've been a property owner down here since 2011 and a resident since 2016. We have watched and participated in this process, and I understand the difference between a guideline and a regulation. This is very clear. I've never come and objected to anything that I've seen coming on down through here, and this is the first thing that I've come down for. I want to applaud our neighbors, Kent and his wife, and the Nelsons. And again, I think you kind of understand that it's the adjacent homeowner who supports the application is the seller and has kind of created the split lot. And applaud them. They've been real open with us about what they're doing, and I think we've been real open with them, kind of conversing back and forth. And so it's a little awkward, kind of dealing with neighbors a little bit, but it's real clear that this shouldn't be approved. It's a very objective issue. It's real clear, and I just urge you guys to deny it or whatever needs to happen to make it not happen. So thank you.
I'm Linda Mioli. I'm at 607 Northwest 7th, directly across the street from the proposed project. I first just wanted to make sure that you received our letter from some of the neighbors in the area. The only other thing I wanted to add is the Fallon House that you guys approved a couple of months ago. Yes, there was a discrepancy in it. One of the setbacks was 33 feet. The other setback was 48 feet. And when they cleared it up, the staff advised them that 33 feet was too close to the setback, and they moved that house 3 feet back in order to comply with the setback, which is a regulation. There are not only that building unit there, but there are another one, possibly two building sites, well, 3 building sites still available. One building site went up for sale 2 weeks ago. So the potential, if you go 4 feet this time, then somebody else wants to go another 4 feet, and somebody else wants to go another 4 feet, it just, this sets a really bad example. I didn't want my house to be 35 feet off the curb, but I was required to do so. I didn't want any grass and trees. I have decomposed granite in my front yard because I needed to comply with that regulation, so I urge you to deny it. Thank you.
I'm Bill Bleakley. I reside with Linda Mioli directly across the street. I I just wanted to say a couple of things. We're here reluctantly because we think this is a beautiful house, a beautiful design, and that the builders, future owners, are going to be wonderful neighbors, and we hate to be in this situation. But we are. Kent talked a lot about the diversity of this block, and there is a great diversity. We're very proud of it, but we do not see that it's a rationale for dealing with the setback situation. The requirement is that it's within the range of the setbacks. They could have said average, or they could say the closest or anything, but for some reason they said the range. Well, the range here is from 4 to 8 feet off of the curb. So if you take an average of that, you're at 6 feet. And the house that is being claimed as the benchmark for this is actually the furthest house down. So I'm not sure that I support what the staff is doing with regard to the requirement here. There was also discussion about this doesn't impact anybody's view. It doesn't impact anybody's view on the south side, and view isn't all that critical a factor, except that if it is said it doesn't impact everybody, it impacts the people on the north side. You can see the height of this building. I'm not sure what that center solid wall is, but I'm thinking 32 plus feet up in the air at the end. We're not talking about the people who live on their side of the street looking down and whether it interferes with anything. It affects the people on the north side of the street because their important view is that tiny sector of the downtown skyline. And in a 360 degrees, that sector might be 20 degrees, 25 degrees or something. And when the obstruction is that close to the focal point or the center of the circle, 5 feet or 3 feet or how many feet it's going to be can take out a large chunk, particularly the further down you get on the street. Ed's house is probably not going to be impacted. Linda's and my house is only a little bit, but as you go down, the arc increases for those people and takes out, the obstructed arc increases and takes out the view. So it is a factor. The other aspect of this, and we dealt with it on the 8th and Chartel thing, is can you create a situation and then claim harm by it? The transaction created the amount of land subject to whatever it is that is being purchased, and I don't think it's fair to then claim that it's subject to hardship because it's subject to all of the rules and regulations under which the property was acquired. Thank you.
Any other members of the public that would like to speak on this, please come up. Commission, any discussion?
I'd like to add one comment to what I said before because I should have said this first. I think the building is really attractive. I think the architects have done a great job. I think it fits in very well with the street. I do feel like, especially from the vantage point that I came in, that it's forward on the corner. It actually is going to impact the whole street from its visual, from outside looking in. And then there was a very good point about the view sightlines from the north looking back towards. That is a regulation. I agree. One of the things for me that's a bigger component of this discussion is how does this building site itself with respect to existing grades as you round the corner and head south. And I feel like that needs to be brought back. I feel like that needs to be actually seen so we can understand, and I think it'll also give the architects the opportunity to make the adjustments in the walls that might eliminate the request for a variance, even though that variance was one that could have been support provided by staff. It might go away once the grading is redone and we have the opportunity to see it in its totality. So I would like to see the project brought back and rendered and documented in a manner that we can see how the existing grades affect the design.
Yeah, I share those concerns, your concern on the wall, and I would like to see a site plan with grading, and that could take care of my concern over the wall. And then I don't know if the applicant, after hearing the audience and reading the comments, has a different position now on the setback.
I would like to say something. In regards to blocking views from the north to the south, we did take into consideration and have stepped the setbacks from the east property line back up. As we go up from the first to the second floor, it's back about 4 feet. As we go up from the second to the third floor, we're back about another 9 feet, not including an accent wall that you see there with the gentleman standing right next to it on the third floor balcony. So with that regards, I think that we have tried to do whatever we could to keep from blocking any of the downtown views. However, if we were to pull everything back, we could potentially be within all of the guidelines and put a 3-story straight wall all the way up that would potentially block even more views than had been brought up today.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
was going to add that too. I don't know how 3.9 feet is going to make a huge difference. You're not shifting, you're going just back a little ways. I think when you start to get 100 feet away across the street, I'm not sure. That might be 1 inch of Devon Tower or BOK Tower you might not be able to see. Very little difference, but there are, again, there's size constraints to the lot. To build a functional, efficient home for me, my wife, and our future family, hopefully, that's the reason why we have the plan as proposed, especially with the garage having to be off of the back of the house. You put a double garage there, that, there's 20 plus feet that takes up the lot as well. And if you have to say shift that to right off of Dewey rather than having the courtyard, man, it really, I think, harms the home, the value of the home, because you block off that whole downstairs view towards downtown. That's the reason why we put the garage on the back west part of the lot, to open that up from the living room, dining room areas. You start to either shave it off. I don't know if we can do that. You have a very narrow kitchen, dining, living. You're going to have to add space probably elsewhere, like Steve mentioned, going up second and third floors and making those larger, and potentially blocking even, making the view blocked even more.
So I'm going to make a comment, and some of this is to kind of just empathize with the neighbors. This is happening in a lot of different neighborhoods right now where setbacks are trying to be skewed and changed. In ours, it's currently happening, probably even, scale-wise, similar stuff. But, there's one person in favor of this and every other person that's wrote, it really isn't. And so the input of that, on my opinion of this commission, the setbacks, that's one thing that we kind of need to really listen to. And while the next door neighbor, that's one thing, but, maybe this is just through talking, but I believe that I think he is the one selling the property. So in that case, his ability to, want it to happen.
I think he's motivated.
It's motivated on that. So,
knowing them, I don't believe that to be the case.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I mentioned this setback. I guess I must have forgot. You have to wonder how important that setback is when a light commercial use is allowed here. That would have no required setback. That could be 0 setback. Someone could build a light office, commercial office, and then go right to the property line. I feel like if you allow something like that, then why, the setback argument rings a little more hollow. I feel like when there are uses allowed, that can go right to the north property line.
Yeah.
And so if myself, another buyer, or the Nelson himself wanted to build himself his own office, he works out of, I think, his home now. If he wanted to build an office, he could do that, and neighbors' opinions don't matter. So, I mean, I understand. We were up, as I mentioned, we were up front with many of the nearby neighbors. I never really got any comments from them at the time until, this here about a week before. So, disappointed in that. But again, I think the 3.9 feet is reasonable. This case, I think, should be decided on its own individual merits, not looked as some precedent. There's only two more, I think, lots at the opposite end of the block that are still empty, and so I feel like, again, maybe it changes the setbacks. I don't know, but again, it's at the end of the block. I feel like it's just not as big a deal if the rest of the block was there only 2 or 3 homes on it, but the block is filling up already.
So, yeah. So, well, while his motivation may not be that, just some of it's kind of to continue. It's an overwhelming amount of people that kind of dispute it. And while, the precedent being set, each of these things, the way I see it, it's an individual issue. But really, it's a good-looking building. The height, it's compliant if it's in the setbacks. And the setbacks mixed with the height, it does affect, views in a different way. But while the design, we like the design, it adjusting to the setbacks, if you're still compliant in the height, the design likely will change a little bit if the setbacks are changed. So there's still accommodations to make it work for the size that it is. And really, on the grade, that was a really good point. It really, while it's only half lot, the grade may be a little bit less, but there are some things that we, as a commission, can learn from that. So revisiting some of that, and as you see it...
The fence I'm highly flexible on. I mean, I could understand wanting to kind of see a little more there, but I'm certainly flexible on that. Yeah, that's why I asked earlier how one variance gets recommended approval and not the other. I'd gladly swap them if I could if I'm batting 500, I'd gladly take the other. But fence, I'm flexible on that. It's not a set in stone, but the step back is that's an issue. If we're having to squeeze that 3,500 square foot lot to 2,600 square feet. We're just asking for maybe 2,900.
Any other comments from the commission?
So I have a question. So if we were to say, if we wanted to flex on the setback, I feel like they could go back and spin their wheels if they needed to redesign. But what is it that they need to meet? Is that,
You're asking...
Does that 3.9 feet, if we go back, does that get us in compliance?
Correct. With 3.9, that's a better question, is on this block, or, we were given some different dimensions based on houses on the street. I don't know if that carries any weight, but they need to know, probably going back to the
No, that's a
design,
fair question.
what they need.
And I think it's appropriate for staff to comment on that because they put these measurements in the staff report. So does staff agree that 3.9 feet would bring it within the range of the other houses on the block?
The range is from 18.4 to 25.6, and this is at 14.6, so the difference between 18.4 and 14.6 is 3.9. So, yeah, we agree with that distance.
That would give us the range. Still have discussions about...
Correct.
Because that would still present the, a worry of, we're within the range, but as comments were made, well, the next door neighbor, them being probably the most furthest step back, would still be forward in that. I don't know, I worry, does that that argument still rear its head, or is that 18.5 or 18.4 number, allowable?
What I'm hearing is that the commission can't accurately evaluate the setback because the site grading isn't shown accurately, and that once that is studied, you may have to or choose to make some other design decisions that may or may not involve the setback and may or may not involve other changings to the massing. So, does that
Yeah, I would
capture?
agree. That's what I'm hearing. And I think we have a couple of options here. You can agree to a continuance and go back and do the grading work in the plan, which we're going to need anyway. The other option would be just to put it up for a motion to approve, motion to deny, and you could go that route. But the applicant has to agree to continuance, so let me give you that option first and see if you want to have a continuance.
To be honest, I didn't, I thought about this coming in. Continuance is something I really wasn't interested in. I had no idea which way votes may or may not go, but going back and redesigning is going to take quite a bit of time, money, and effort. And frankly, it's something I'm not interested in at this moment. I'd probably just rather see a vote, and regardless, move forward to the Board of Adjustments.
In the event that it is there a difference in the time frame that will be allowed with a denial versus a continuance? Could they be back before us sooner if it was continued, but if it was denied, it would push way out further?
Are you talking about the denial of the variance? Because all you're doing on that is a recommendation to the board
Denial of the
of
project.
the application.
Yeah, obviously, I'd like to know that how that affects moving forward. I mean, if I
Yeah, I don't have the calendar in front of me, but Board of Adjustment only meets once a month in the summer months instead of twice a month. So it would be, I would think it would be 6 weeks from today is the soonest you could get.
July 5th, a convenient date.
Right. That's without looking at the calendar, I would think it would be at least 6 weeks from today.
So let me understand. We're making a recommendation on the variance. That recommendation is appealed to the BOA, or does that go straight?
The case, he's talking about if you guys deny it, he could appeal.
Regardless, I have to go to the Board of Adjustments, correct?
Decision, yeah, regardless of the
But our
variance.
denial would be based on the setback, right?
No, all you're doing on the setback is a recommendation.
Right.
So that just goes to the board one way or the other.
Okay, so that's my point. What would we be denying it on besides the setback?
The grading.
Or you
So-
could bring back the grading too. You could
A
approve it and bring
continuance
back
on the
grading.
grade is what we're talking about, and
I was proposing the idea of a continuance so that the grading could be addressed through a better, more accurate site plan, and potentially the applicant could decide to move the house within the range of setbacks, and we could consider it all with
Yeah.
accurate drawing.
So just make sure, I mean, I think you were saying that you're not open to a continuance. It sounds like the continuance would be dealing with the grade issue, and if you want to readdress the setback.
I wasn't planning to, with a continuance to address the setback.
Okay, I mean, so you would come back in front of us with the more information about the grade, which is what we would like, and then the setback issue would still be the same unless you make changes.
Sure.
And we would make the recommendation based on that.
If, I suppose if grading is an issue and we're wanting more information, I don't know, could you say Board of Adjustments meet, I know they meet July 5th, but you're saying it's probably not in August?
No, I know they meet in August, I don't know the date.
Okay.
But I do want to point out, you have to invest, I believe you would have to invest in more design time because you won't be able to build it without an accurate site grading plan.
Certainly. We submitted what we thought was necessary and pertinent. I wasn't aware that more details on grading and a topo of the site or something was needed.
The other thing you should consider is that if you were continued and you could turn the plans around quickly, as in like next week, you would be still going to June 27th, which would still be in advance of the July 5th BOA, and you could still stay on that agenda, I believe.
I know the July 5th, you have to apply for at the end of this week.
Okay, well, you're going to have to apply for it one way or the other.
Yeah, if that's what you say, we can get a continuance, and we could be back next month rather than 2 months. Yeah,
I mean, that's dependent on your being able to turn plans around, like I said, in a very quick time frame, like next Tuesday, Wednesday.
But that, Michael, we have this page in here that looks like this. It has the different addresses on the south side of the street. Two of those addresses, or two of the bullets there, talk about privacy walls. I drove this block, but I can't really picture those privacy walls. Are those running north-south, so perpendicular to the street?
if you bring up the page with pictures of those homes, you can maybe zoom in on. Should be one more sheet. Back. Well, there was another. I thought there was another sheet with the front of the homes.
This one?
Well, maybe not. I don't know if it's in this.
The majority of the privacy walls run east to west. The privacy wall that's between 622 and 614 runs north-south. So that was measured from the curb to the front edge of the privacy wall there. All of the other privacy walls run east-west.
So is the applicant willing to have this case continued or not?
Yes, I guess so. Let's go ahead and
Okay.
you can grant me that. We'll grant a continuance. We'll work on grading. Try to be back next month.
Okay. Do I have a motion for a continuance?
Just one comment
Yes.
before. Your dimension, setback dimension, is with respect to non-conditioned wing walls on your property. It's features, it's elements, it's not really relating to the internal enclosed conditioned spaces within your house. You might discuss with your architect while he's going through this process to consider.
I did. We looked at taking the dimensions, or we initially took the dimensions from the heated and cooled space and anticipated that the accent wall or protrusion was, since it wasn't heated and cooled square footage, would not apply to the setback requirements.
Well, I think your dimension is correct, but I think that there is some opportunity for some modest designs.
May I also point out that the 3.9 feet that we're talking about is to that accent wall, to the exterior veneer, as compared to 2 feet back from that, so we're really only talking 1.9 feet.
Well, but we are still talking about, now we're talking about accents. If you wanted to redo a slight adjustment to your design, while you're doing this grading, you might be able to find some of that latitude in areas.
I think you're looking at measurements on the corners of the home, and you move that in to where the, I guess, the windows, yeah, we would actually be 2 feet less.
I think what Mr. Blatt is suggesting is that we pull the extrusion back further.
Have some adjustments. You were saying I'd have to lose 3.9 feet of my house, but you wouldn't lose 3.9 feet of your house. You'd lose a modest portion of your house and a modest portion of the wing wall, and maybe combined, you could come back with something that would, in this time period where you have the opportunity, I know you said you didn't want to, I'm saying since you're going to go ahead and continue the case, look at that as well. There might be some opportunities.
Yes, whether we pull that back or measure to the, back to the, I guess, the exterior wall rather than that pointing out, because as I mentioned, across the street, there's an accent wall that comes 10 feet out of the house. It's in a solid block. It's closer to the street.
Be sure to get your dimension where staff wants it. Make sure that your dimension goes to where staff wants it to be.
Yes.
If that's the front of the wing wall, it's still the front of the wing wall, but take a look at it while you have this time.
May I ask staff how they looked at the residence that was across the street that Mr. Ward is referencing?
Maybe that would be appropriate in a meeting that you have with staff outside of this forum. So the applicant is willing to have this continued. Do I have a motion for a continuance?
Motion to continue this item.
I have a second?
Second.
To June 22nd?
To June 22nd.
27th.
27th, sorry.
Motion to continue to June 27th.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Case is continued. We have no other business. We have some communications that are listed, administrative approvals that we do not need to vote on. Do we have any comments from Planning Department staff? Any comments from commission members? Our next meeting date is Wednesday, June 27th, and we are adjourned.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. See you later.